A couple of programming notes. With the playoffs are well underway now. We're through round one. Round two already started yesterday. We literally had game one of an Eastern Conference series followed by game seven of a Western Conference series last night. And so we're having tons of games back to back. This series with OKC and Denver is going to be every other night, basically, until the end. There's basically every other night, the entire series, unless it goes 7 games. So we're going to be back after game 3 or 4. Hopefully the series isn't over by then. To break down the state of the series. So basically next week. So look out for us there. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the show. Please do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons. Really helps us out with the algorithm as we try to grow the channel. We were trying to get to 900 subs before round 2. We're right at 892, just 8 away. Maybe you guys will see this and hit that subscribe button enough times to get us to 900 before game 1 tonight. But we're also trying to hit 1,000 subs before the end of the playoffs. So if you could hit the subscribe button, it would really help us out in getting to that goal. Let's jump into some basketball. Cool. We're going to talk about the end of the Nuggets-Clippers series. This was a really exciting series. I thought it was the best series of the first round of the playoffs. The Denver Nuggets really put you through the ringer the last few weeks. It's no secret that the team was playing some of its worst basketball toward the end of the year. They closed the season actually pretty strongly, winning their last 3 games to not only make the playoffs, but get home court in round 1 as a top 4 seed. But before that, they were 8-7 in March. It's been widely reported that the jolt, quote unquote, that Josh Kroenke wanted to induce in the locker room has manifested following the firings of head coach Michael Malone and general manager Calvin Booth. From your perspective as a writer for the team, right? You're not necessarily like in the locker room all the time, any of this stuff, but you are a member of the organization, and there's been a lot made of the vibe shift that seem to follow these firings. What is your particular feeling on where the team was at emotionally and the organization was at emotionally heading into the playoffs?
I think the change was the right move, for sure.
Okay.
I think that's probably the best way to put it. Yeah, it was the right move in the sense that it's just hard. Like when you have a team that's been together for as long as they have, sometimes it really is just a change. Like it's just some form of shakeup. And like I look at this playoff run and they lose game 3. And I remember coming out of game 3 being like, all right, this is typically the game where, especially at the end of the year, where they lose those like 3 games, that last game against Indiana, which I guess was Malone's last game. I remember being like, all right, this is it. Like we know kind of what we know like what those changes have done based on how game 4 goes, and they respond. And maybe that's who the Nuggets are. Like they're always going to be that response team. They've had a lot of those in the playoffs the last couple of years. Like I think about game 3 against Minnesota when they go down 0-2. I sort of agree. You could say like the Suns in that series coming out, winning game 5 and then winning game 6. Yeah. There's a bunch of like response wins. So maybe that would have always happened, but that definitely was like a big turning point and tipping point game, I guess, where you look at that and you say, hey, like this team responded. They showed up in game 4. And I really don't know if that would have happened just because of kind of where the season was going at the end of the year. It just really felt like things were not going to submerge and kind of come out of it, to be honest. But I mean, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not playing. So
yeah, something that we talked about in the aftermath of, probably the most shocking news item of the season, which is crazy in a season where Luka Doncic gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, was that quote from Jokic about how Josh probably got the response that he wanted, which was just trying to like kind of put everybody on notice, not in like a threatening way, but just in like we're not sleepwalking through the rest of this season kind of way. Like it's time to wake up. So let's move on to the actual playoff run. You covered the Nuggets title run in 2023, and they didn't have a game 7 in that title run, thankfully. Like, they were 16-4, very dominant throughout those playoffs. And you covered the Nuggets last year when they went 7 with the Wolves and, lost in that round 2 series. Is there any difference in basically your job and how you cover the team in the regular season versus in the playoffs, especially in these close, tightly contested series where you're tracking adjustments from both teams game by game and trying to get everything in depth?
Oh, it's more fun. It's probably like, it really is. I love this stuff. I love going back and being like, all right, like, how did they guard the post? Are they bringing help from the entry passer? Are they this is the stuff I like to do. So the fact that it is kind of the work is going back and looking and trying to explain what happened in each game, because every game really matters. It's really fun. I just like it. I feel like I wake up the next day after a game and I'm really, like, truly excited to look at what happened in that game. Let's be honest, you don't have that every game in the regular season. You might get one of those a month.
Yeah.
And even if it's like, oh, cool, this is a game I'm really excited for, half the team might sit, or a guy's injured. So I love it. To me, it just is more fun overall to do that type of work. But job-wise, yeah, I mean, you definitely feel the pressure a little bit more. You also, like me, I feel a lot more like emotionally kind of consumed by the team. You feel it, like you feel, all right, there's a loss. You feel that the next day a lot more, or I do at least. And then, even like going into a game 7, like I walk to the arena and I'm like nervous, like unable to listen to music, can't think, can't do anything.
Oh my gosh. You need a routine like Jamal. Meditate.
I try. I go for walks. That's what I do. But yeah. But overall, I just think it's more like enjoyable. But I've always liked playoffs for that reason.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I was a bit disappointed in following game 3 was like, oh man, I thought we finally got past this thing where we're talking about like effort over and over and over again throughout the season for either our team or the other team. And game 7 was a little bit of that, and we'll get to that. But actually kind of getting, in most of these games, solid effort from both teams and being able to really talk about the tactics in a way that is meaningful is definitely a lot more enjoyable than in the regular season. But I definitely feel you on the emotional investment as well. You hear that, Matt's bosses? He's very invested in this job.
They know.
He should get a raise.
Oh my God. They sit next to me at games. They know. They know. It's like every possession I'm living or dying by. So they know.
All right. So let's jump into the actual Clippers series here. When we last left the Nuggets, the series was tied at 2-2 on the most improbable buzzer beater ever, I think, because any like crazy jump shot could go in. But AG's tip dunk with less than 0.1 left on the clock, like literally couldn't. It's like Schrodinger's tip dunk because we don't have the frame where the light goes on, like where it's starting to come on, right? But they called it good on the floor. They couldn't overturn it. We get those points. We win game 4. Denver had looked dominant that entire game, but the Clippers' fourth quarter zone had left them flummoxed, which allowed them to come back from a 22-point deficit to even take the lead at one point in that fourth quarter before Denver managed to, eke that one out. Going into game 5, though, this was obviously a win and dominant performance, 115 to 131 in favor of Denver. And Jamal was the story of game 5, right? He was completely unguardable. What was the most promising thing that you saw from Jamal in this game in terms of how he attacked the Clippers defense as a scorer?
Probably all the threes he got up, which is so funny because he hates when you ask about threes. But
it was 12 or 14 in that game.
14, and he made 8, which was great. He was. I mean, like for me, I always watch Jamal, and I'm always impressed by how good he is at like dragging guys into screens. So it was fourth quarter. There's 1 3 that sticks out, and he takes the ball up. DJ sets a step up screen or like a high screen for Jamal to come off of in semi transition. And first off, DJ is so like he's still so good at those. I think
was this the empty side action?
Yes, on the
Yes,
where
I
he
remember the
drags
one, and
him.
it's that leaner that he takes.
Yes,
It was very like,
like
oh, Jamal doesn't normally take that three. That's like a Steph
yeah.
three, but
That's his
he
like
took it
heat
and he made
check,
it.
like I'm feeling it,
Yeah,
transition three. But yeah, it was coming out of this like big cross. And then like, yeah, as you said, like kind of leaning three. So yeah, he just was like really impressive in that game. That was also such a good, like he had that also, there was a shot really similar to this in game seven, but where he's like, I think he came off a handoff in the first half and Derek Jones Jr. trailed him, and he did really like played pretty good defense. And Jamal just like I don't even know how he did it. He like was falling backwards. I think he ended up on the floor and still hit the mid range shot.
yeah, he
He had a
fell out of
shot.
bounds on that
It
one.
was crazy, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, like you can play incredible defense against this guy, but like when he's feeling it like that, there's really not much you can do. And he had a
Yeah,
similar shot in game seven where end of shot clock, he's got two guys on him. And that shot was insane in person. I have no idea how he even got that off, much less made it. It's for me, that's like so encouraging to see when he's playing like that, really feels that good on his legs. That's especially for this series against all the perimeter defenders he's going to have to go through.
yeah.
That stuff is really, really encouraging.
And we're going to talk about this when we get to the OKC preview, but I love that the first thing you mentioned was the volume of threes that he attempted, because
Mm-hmm.
it's basically the only game of this series that he got up to those double-digit attempts, but it's something that we're constantly asking for throughout the regular season and in the playoffs. It just adds another dimension to this offense, whether he's making them or missing them, but because, defenses are so keyed in on this guy doesn't want to take that pull-up three. He wants to drive and like methodically probe, and a large part of that is because he's often looking for passing angles to Jokic, right?
Yep.
But he'll get easier passing angles if defenses have to play him for the three. That's the irony, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also that comes with like setting your screens higher. And so
Yeah.
it's an overall
Yeah.
like, and they did a good job of that in that game for sure. But I mean, the thing with that game that I look at is not just like, all right, he like took a bunch of threes, but like his utilization was really creative.
Yeah.
They ran
He's such a
split cut plays
creative
for him.
on-ball player and off-ball
He really
player.
is. And off ball. I mean, they ran handoffs for him to get him going. So that just the different ways that he was attacking, it was a really cool Jamal performance in that, yes, you got like the tough shot making where he's hitting mid-range shots over guys, but you also got, oh, cool, he's coming off a handoff. Jokic is faking a handoff to MPJ and then kind of like chucking the ball backwards to Jamal. So there were a lot of different ways that I think he attacked. And to me, it was just like a really complete offensive performance. Just
Yeah.
all the different ways that he scored with or without Jokic. It was a really fun and like complete performance from Jamal.
Right. Definitely one of those games where you get to see like basically his full bag on and off
Yes.
the ball, right?
Yes. Yeah. And his passing was good. I think that's worth bringing up too, because that was the key to me in that game. They're blitzing him so much and he's getting off the ball so early. And that's tough. Like when you're putting whatever, you're giving DeAndre Jordan or Nikola Jokic or whoever an advantage, a 4-on-3 advantage, short rolling, that's super advantageous. And if that doesn't work out, you can reset with Jamal. So that was the big key too, is you're making a lot of decisions earlier in the shot clock. And that's just giving your offense more room to breathe.
Yeah, we really love to get deep in the shot clock with our offense. We'll talk about that when we get to the OKC preview. So they followed up that game 5 with a pretty tough game 6 loss, in my opinion. I thought it was a tough loss because it was a closeout opportunity. It would have, if they'd won that game, given them a few more days rest going into round 2. But obviously they go to a game 7 where, I don't love game 7s, especially after last year, just because anything can happen. But, just talking about that game 6 a little bit, Jokic was really taken out of that game. Of any game in the entire series, he was taken out of it as a scorer. And even Jamal didn't really come online until like the second half. He started off a little bit hot early in like the first quarter, but then the Clippers put some more length on him with Batum and Derek Jones Jr. and we just really didn't go to him more until like the second half of that game. It seemed like the Clippers were pushing off of our misses a lot more in that game as well. So the fact that we weren't scoring was really hurting our defense and attacking us more in early offense. Norm pushing off misses and initiating the offense, etc., and getting downhill and just kind of creating like small advantages that they could take advantage even in the half court. Those we're talking about. We constantly talk about those advantages in semi-transition on this show. And I thought like, oh no, the Clippers have figured out that our transition defense is, not the strongest in the league. And then towards the end of the game, the Clippers started to slow down. They were trying to play prevent offense and maybe also ran out of gas a bit. We were getting stops, but then eventually just didn't have enough juice to seal the deal in the end. There were a couple missed layups from Russ, from Jokic, and a lot of hesitancy from Jokic, especially to take threes that were available to him. Why do you think Jokic in particular was so hesitant to take threes in this series, even though like the Clippers were one of the opponents in the regular season where he averaged some of his highest 3-point attempts in the season? And it's not like he was shooting poorly in the series. He shot 45% on over 4 attempts, but I feel like he could have taken more.
So first off, Ty Lue, before I think even game 1, he mentioned like we're very concerned with him taking threes. So that was like a big, I'm assuming way up on the top of their scouting report was if it's Zubac, great. We're going to try to have, him run Nikola off the line. And he was so good at that in this series. I really thought he was, his mobility at his size is just like ridiculous. He was awesome. I thought he was their best player. Like
he was definitely their most consistent.
He was so good in that series. So if it wasn't him, they're going to try to bring the guy like closest on the perimeter. So like I think that's called nexting, where you bring the closest perimeter defender and he's just going to slide over to the pick and pop guy. They did that a lot. And then I just think seeing that many bodies, like the whole team, I would say generally the Nuggets like to take wide open threes a lot more than maybe more contested threes. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
And I think everybody does.
Every team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. But I think that was something the Clippers did really well for the most part. Like there were certain guys that they left open where I'm like, you should probably stop leaving Russ open. He's killed you. He's a 50% corner three-point
At least
shooter.
They weren't even giving token contests in this series to Russ and Peyton in particular. But even Christian, like they weren't even, stunting at them. It was pretty, Christian struggled to shoot in this series, but like Russ in particular has shot well in every game that he played in this series. Right. So, once you get to like game 7, which we'll talk about, it's kind of strange that you're still just like, okay, whatever, not even offering the stunt. Right. Because even like the Nuggets were ignoring Chris Dunn throughout the series and Derek Jones Jr. But like with Dunn, especially, like we like to throw in some like different looks, try to run them off the line, try to force them to make a play every so often. And they never did that with Russ once in this series.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Point being, like there were more of those short closeouts on Nikola, if not full out closeouts. And that was clearly their scouting report. And I guess at the end of the day, you need to give up something and you need to take away something. But I don't know. Clippers to me, they're an older team and you have to kind of expend energy as smart as possible as an older team. Whereas you're like, if it's OKC, like I actually think that's like a pretty sizable advantage for them is that they're young and they have a ton of energy and they can do those short closeouts, especially after all the rest. They've played like 4 games in a month. They're able to do that. Whereas the Clippers, they were so gassed in game 7. It was crazy to watch. Like you could see guys like Kawhi would post up and it felt like you could see his legs like shaking. They were so gassed in that second half. It was pretty noticeable for me. And I think just even talking with other people there. But yeah, actually there was one thing I wanted to say was that yes, they definitely started playing a little more prevent and stuff in the second half. I thought the zone adjustment was really good in that second quarter where they ran zone.
For the Clippers in game 6?
In game 7, the Nuggets.
Oh, in game 7.
Ran zone. in second quarter, and I thought it was a really good adjustment. Chris Dunn was on the floor, and the Clippers just I'm assuming like they're already fatigued, and zone is such a great adjustment to run when a team is fatigued and mentally fatigued, especially because you have to think through your actions so much.
So since we're on it, we actually have some clips of that zone from Game 7. If you wanted to just have them up, yes. So since we're talking about Game 7, Denver's dominant win, let's get to the zone defense since you're on it. Well, if you could pull up the Dunn miss here, and then the Zubats and Norm turnovers after that. Okay. Oh wait, is this? Oh yeah, this is full screen. So go ahead. I know that other friend of show who's named Matt Moore, talked about how our zone defense approach was a little bit different in this game. What would you say changed about our zone here, especially in these second quarter minutes, both with the bench and we have some clips with Jokic as well, and why it is that the Clippers couldn't figure it out?
They're a slow team would be but I mean, the thing is they dissected it in other games. But I really think like fatigue-wise and mental fatigue, it's really hard to make those decisions on the fly. And also having Chris Dunn there was smart because, for one, you're like, all right, so we're either going to have Dunn spaced in the corner, which is what Denver wants, or if he's not going to be in the corner, we need to have him be the guy that flashes into the middle of the zone. And he just didn't finish well at the rim, like the whole series. He had so many opportunities where even if he's cutting baseline, he's, kind of missing the layup at the rim, or he's trying to go up and under because he's trying to avoid contact. It was, to me, a really good adjustment, especially with that lineup. And that was such a turning point in that game for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about how it sort of took advantage of the Clippers' more probing nature. They like to play really slow. Harden is looking at the zone, just trying to figure it out. Just passes it over Kawhi. So the turnover wasn't directly because of the zone, but they take a bunch of time trying to get into their action, and then Harden's just like, okay, Kawhi, you get the ball. Russ is fronting the post here to try to prevent an entry pass to Zubats in the middle of the floor, and then MPJ does a good job closing out to the corner here on the catch for Norm. This was one of his many turnovers in this game. And then the Zubats turnover as well. I just wanted to point out Russ's an additional kind of Russ role in this zone here. So Zubats in the middle of the floor again, and Russ is just in there digging at the ball, wreaking havoc there. This is after they make the entry pass to Zubats in the middle of the floor. Now, normally, against most zones, you get the ball to the middle of the floor. It's like, okay, this coverage just got cooked. We got totally burned. But because of Russ's activity here, and MPJ does a good job just kind of like trying to stand him up while Russ is causing his havoc, causing the chaos there, and we were able to force yet another turnover. So those were also, zone isn't always about forcing misses or getting a team out of rhythm. Like, it's kind of, you have to cause some chaos and hope that you win in the chaos battle.
Yes. And like, if you look at that last clip, when Zoo has the ball, they've got Harden and I believe Bogdan on the weak side. So if he gets off that ball earlier, you can swing to the corner.
Right. But again, you're trying to force Zubats to make, this is a tougher short roll decision than just a normal, pick and roll with a tagger.
It's from an angle.
Right. And we've got guys kind of surrounding him, kind of playing the gaps a little bit, but the read isn't as easy.
For sure. Yeah. But there are reads there. The issue is you're asking them to do this game 7 on the road in altitude, older team.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that's what that adjustment was. That's what made that adjustment so good, was that, hey, like, you've tried zone in different ways and it worked, and the Clippers were slow, and they were like, the games the Clippers won, they were just fast about getting into their actions. I actually I know Adelman said was that turnovers were kind of the trend of the series. And I agree with that. I do. And I think the other component to that is that the team that played slower and was slower to get into actions had more of those games. Like game 6, the Nuggets, we were talking about working at the end of the shot clock.
Yep.
There were two
shot clock violations,
which is not like the Nuggets.
We probably had more, but there were 2 that were exactly the same, where Jamal just doesn't know the clock and then kicks out too late, and the guy takes the shot like too late.
And it was even just like the way the ball was pushed up the floor, like it's pushed slowly. So I think on both sides of the ball, you saw that the Clippers were really sluggish, and that was always kind of the big. I mean, Harden and Kawhi are just slower players. Like they just are. They hang on to the ball. They try to read the floor. Harden likes to call in one guy. Oh, okay, I don't want that screen. Can you have this guy come in? They pre-switch, and that's great. Like that's why he's so good at mismatch hunting. But it also makes your offense, you have less time to work with. And in a game 7 where you're throwing a zone out there against 2 guys that are vets and they're, in their mid-30s, it worked. So it was a good adjustment.
So, the other story of this game is that both Jokic and Jamal were not really the stories in terms of scoring. So Denver won this game 7 going away 120-101. But it was the non-Jokic and non-Jamal Nuggets that were able to make, that impact on the offensive end. Were you surprised that a lot of these players have not necessarily, been the focal point of such a big game before? But were you surprised at the impact that they were able to make in a closeout game?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I think when you look at a game 7, you're always like, okay, well, it's a lot of pressure. So the guys that are, the focal points of the team are going to be doing that. Like you look at the Warriors game yesterday and you're like, okay, Steph is going to go for 30 and that's how they're going to win.
But Buddy
and
Hield
it's like, Buddy Hield has 22 points. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Game 7s are weird and weird stuff happens. Like the guy that, that has been pretty up and down, I would say this year, is the guy who's like the hero of game 7. And that's how game 7s are. They're weird. They're weird games where weird stuff happens. And that's
why I don't like going to it.
Oh yeah. You should never, ever, be like, oh, it's all good. Well, it's fine. We lost game 6. We'll go to 7 because game 7 is weird. As a storyteller, that's my job. I loved how that game went because you look at the box score of game 7 against the Timberwolves, and it's like Jamal has 25. Do you have 30? You might have 30 in that game.
I think.
Yeah. Jokic is over 20, and then it's a bunch of like single digit performances. And this is the inverse where you have games that are probably below the standard that Jamal and Nikola are at, but you have 6 guys in double figures. CB's made 3 3-pointers. Russ was awesome off the bench. P-Watt had a really good performance, and it's like the inverse performance, and it's the perfect way, I think, to get that redemption of a game 7. So like me, I leave that game 7 and I just go, man, like really doesn't matter what happens the rest of the way. Like obviously you want to win a championship. That's the goal. But at the very least, you can come out of the season and be like, man, we won a game 7 and we did it together. Not to be like too cliche, but they did the thing that they couldn't do last year. Right.
Yeah.
So
because when you look at it, you talked about the Nuggets box score in that game 7. Game 7 was not a good game for Anthony Edwards, scoring wise. He was really important and impactful defensively in the second half of that game. It was a big game for Cat in the first half, but he didn't even close that game. It was really about the Wolves role players, being able to get it done. So yeah, I completely agree with you about the wonky nature of game 7s and how you never know who's going to go off on you. Basically what happened to the Nuggets in 2019 against the Blazers in that game 7 as well. Like it wasn't Dame that was killing them. It was CJ and the Funky Bunch on the Portland Trail Blazers. Do you think that you learned, you're talking about the just what you're able to take away from this series regardless of how the rest of this season goes. Do you feel like you learned anything new about this Nuggets team, or were any of your assumptions about this team or what they would look like going into the series confirmed in any way coming out of it versus the Clippers?
I learned they're more resilient than maybe I thought
Mm.
they were a month ago. Because I didn't know where the season was going. Is it surprising to me that the Nuggets are resilient? No, like I've watched them for a while. They've definitely had a lot of wins like that. I don't know if I learned anything, I would say. The team kind of, if anything I've learned, I really don't have a feel for them. I still kind of don't really know who they
You're like, I
are. They're
don't
like
get
not,
this team.
yeah, I really don't. I
I
do in
literally work
ways.
for them, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird. It's been a weird team to cover. In like the micro sense, not really. I guess the big thing would be like Nikola was awesome defensively, and that was cool to see. Like he really, really was just like impressive to me on that end. His coverage is really
yeah,
strong. So that would be maybe the thing I learned. But I also have watched Nikola in the playoffs before, and I know his defense always
like
steps
can
up.
be
Like it,
great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So learned no, but definitely like
Actually,
relearned.
since we're on this defense, I wanted to call up a couple of clips from this game 7 because Jokic did have a really another rough scoring game, not quite as bad as game 6, but still like that wasn't where he was making his impact. But he had a couple of just incredible defensive plays. The first one was this steal in transition. Will, if you could bring that one up. So Derrick Jones Jr., I think, gets the ball here. He's pushing, and he goes to tries to go up, but then is like, I can't make it, so let me try to get it to Zubats. And Jokic reads it perfectly and gets this steal, which was really impressive. But then the next one, which was even crazier, was the lob breakup. I thought this was very Draymond-esque. So this is Clippers getting into early offense. Harden attacks Christian downhill in isolation, which they started to do more of towards the end of this series. Then throws the lob to Zubats after he draws Jokic in help, and Jokic reads it perfectly. Like this was very Draymond-esque, actually, for him to break up that lob attempt. It helps that Zoo isn't like the most vertical athlete, but he's like he's a good lob catcher and finisher and all of that. So the fact that he was able to break that up, and turn it into, I believe, points on the other end was awesome, I thought.
That was a great play. And I think he knew Harden wanted to pass the ball there.
Yeah.
Because that was...
And that's good too. Like just being able to read the offensive player. That's so much more of defense than I think is easy for us to talk about because there's so much, discussion about the various athletic traits and like physical things you need to do. But if you know what your defender wants to do, that could get you like halfway towards making a good, defensive play. For me, I think the thing that I learned about this team, or maybe it's more of a conception that might be shifting for me, actually came from my review, my reconnaissance on a couple of different Clippers podcasts as I was as we were working our way through the series. Adam Oslin from the Clippers Talk podcast actually made this point. I think it was it might have been after game 5, but maybe it was after game 7, where, he talked about this idea that a lot of people had going into the series about the Clippers having more depth. And he tried to basically differentiate between like, yeah, we trust our, 6th through 8th guys more, but our 4th and 5th, like we don't know where we're going to get the production of our 4th and 5th guy on a given night. And a lot of times we're relying on those 6th through 8th guys to give us that. In contrast, and this is, straight from him, from Adam, is the contrast was like, regardless of whether he was shooting well or not, Christian Braun was making some kind of impact on the game. And often it did translate to box score, whether it's rebounds, transition finishes, cutting finishes, etc. So even if he wasn't shooting well from 3, they always knew they were going to get some kind of steady production from that 5th guy. And even, MPJ was up and down in this series, and I think understandably given, the shoulder injury, but I thought he was more good than bad in this series overall. And what a soldier. Being able to fight through a 7-game series with a sprained shoulder. But you could say like the kind of top three guys were obviously Jokic, Jamal, and AG in this particular series. And then they got something from MPJ and they got something from CB on any given night. So even if the 6 through, well, for us, it's 6 through 7 guys on this team were up and down. And in our case, it was just like, is Russ playing or not? Because when he played, he brought
so
it every night. And that was another like pretty consistent one. So I would say Russ was better than whoever the Clippers had at 6 that night. But I think that was that differentiation that Adam Oslan made on his podcast helped me think a little bit differently about not just this team, but the meaning of depth in general. You know, there's a lot of conversation about, you don't have to necessarily answer anything about this right now. You know, what is the team going to do in the off season? We have such a top heavy cap sheet, all of this stuff. But I'm somebody who's constantly looking at the data and trying to assess, like, you know, is this worth it? And yes, on the one hand, the non-Jokic minutes, you know, have like never been worse. But on the other hand, the Jokic minutes have never been better. And part of that is because of who is around him for most of that time. And so it's kind of like the more expensive, and it's not just about money, but we're talking about the quality of the players, but just as a proxy, the more expensive the starting lineup has gotten, the better their minutes have gotten to try to make up for what happens in the, you know, the non. But it's one of those things where it's like, there are trade-offs to this. And that's kind of the predicament that the Clippers found themselves in, where they're like, well, we have all this like really, really back end depth and all these lineup options, but we don't necessarily have consistency with our best players. And then obviously the Nuggets had the best player, probably the best 2 players in the series between, you know, as great as Jamal was in like game 5. And I think he was relatively consistent. I would say that AG was probably just our most consistent player on both ends of the floor throughout the entire series. And that was another like lesson, but related to this depth, you know, discussion that I took from just kind of probing the minds of Clipper world. Was they were so jealous of how versatile Aaron Gordon is on both ends of the floor, because they're like, they use him in so many different ways and allows them to play different types of basketball, whether Jokic is on the floor or not. And he presented, his own issues for them. So.
Yeah, AG is better than ever. He's so good. He is so good. I just left every game being like, this guy is like, there's nothing he can't do. He was always like a Swiss Army knife, but like the shooting now is just, and he didn't really have that good of a shooting series, but like now after this year, that's more of like a surprise.
He finished the series with over 60% true shooting. So if he just made a few more threes, it would have been just like an insane role player series.
I'd have to check the numbers, but I felt like the mid range was good, and the free throw shooting, he led the team in free throw shooting.
Led the team in free throw shooting.
Which it's just, he's so good. Yeah, I guess like my takeaway from this series, and this is not really, again, it's not something I learned, but it's good to be reminded, is that the starters are still really good. They were +6 net rating, I think, coming out of this.
Probably better after that game 7, but they were around +10 before game 6 in the series. So.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, like they were a big plus, and that was good to be reminded. Like, even if they had lost game 7, and I'm happy it did not happen, but even if that had happened, I still would have felt pretty good about this series, because I would have come out of it being like, hey, you went 7 with a really good team and your starters are still elite. And that's all you really need to know. Because if you're leaving that series and your starters, those minutes aren't as good, then you really have tougher questions, right? Because you have to think about, how are we going to kind of, what's our next move? Like, do we make a big move? Do we not? Right. And at the very least, you can say, nope, like our starters, that's how we won the title. We had this awesome starting lineup. That group is really, really good. And then, Russ is great. I was actually going to argue if Russ was like a top 3 player in the series, because it felt like it. He was awesome in that series.
He was so awesome in every game. And we're going to talk about how that might change in the next matchup. But I do want to take a second to really appreciate what he gave us. Just a consistent, sometimes he was our 4th or 5th best player on a given night. And he gave us lineup versatility, right? Especially the minutes with Jokic on the floor with 2 point guards in Russ and Jamal were really instrumental to helping us not just match up with the Clippers, but crush them in those minutes. I think they were like plus 20 in those 2 point guard looks, plus 20 net, which is pretty insane. You know, we talk so much about like, oh no, like why are we doing all these 2 point guard looks? But the data always said that they were actually pretty good, especially with Jokic on the floor. And, you know, you talk about like, well, you've got some defense issues here and there. It's different when AG is on the floor. It just is. And especially in this series where the Clippers play extra small all the time, with the level of activity that, you know, Russ brings, whether he's guarding at the point of attack or he's playing free safety in this zone, as we, you know, talked about in those other clips, it was just, he just switched us into a different gear when he was on the floor, and then obviously made shots on top of all of that. So got to give Russ his flowers for that series.
The starters were plus 12 net rating, which is the best of any lineup other than the Knicks. I'm sorry, not the Knicks. That's just the most minutes. Yeah, that's the best of any high volume team other than the Pacers. My fault. So
the Pacers have been real. I think they're like plus 17 or something right now.
They
maybe
are
higher after
yesterday.
After that win against the Cavs.
They might be. Does Naismith start for them?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So they're plus 21.1.
Wow. Yeah. The Cavs have some things they need to solve, but it's good to see that, because we left last season thinking we had this awesome starting lineup, obviously with KCP in for Christian Brown. Not the best, but one of the best, like, elite lineups in the NBA leaving the regular season. But then it was one of the worst lineups in the playoffs, and it felt like, man, this is such a drag. So, you know, it's nice to see even against a team in the playoffs that's like trying to game plan against them, that, you know, they could pull off that level of you know, consistent play on both sides of the floor. For those of you who made it this far, thank you so much. You must like our content, but if you don't like our content, even, please remember to hit the like button and hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a review. Again, we're trying to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark before the end of the playoffs. That would be awesome. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok. All our social links are in the description. And always remember that winning is fun and losing